Greetings. This is the commentary and sermonette on the song Start Singin' Again. I had this in May of 1994. At that point I was living in a little apartment on Nashville Road, and my oldest daughter was 8 years old at the time. And I was sitting there playing my guitar, and all of a sudden this song started happening. And I said, "Stacy, you're witnessing the birth of a song." And it's like you could cut through the air to feel the magic of what was happening. And I am going to write, Lord willing, an article that talks about the gift of songwriting. No one knows where these come from. And any songwriter that says that they do, I don't believe them. Let's get started. This life often gets real rough. So many things happen that are real tough. As of late, they've won, made my praise dumb, and stole my victory in the sun. I don't know if you've experienced that or not, but there are hard things that happen to us, and boy, it'll steal your song. Everything might go wrong, but I just can't let that steal my song. I gotta start singing again to Jesus, because He's my best friend, through thick and thin. There's not really a whole lot to comment on. I think that says what I need to say. Now, the next verse. Shoved out of a church, hard to work with deceit, hard to leave behind though I shook the dust off my feet. This world has no use for a divinity degree. Hard lessons, hard learned. Then my car engine burned. And that's a true story. Yeah, it is. The history behind that, I moved to Bowling Green in end of '92 to pastor a church, and it was an independent Christian church. Without getting into a lot of details, a pulpit committee that interviewed me, and I submitted all kinds of written material to them. They came out and taped a bunch of questions that the congregation had, and then I even into the tape gave them 5 idiosyncrasies about myself. And in that particular denomination there's a mixed feelings on baptism, and I made it very clear I do not believe that water immersion is essential for salvation, period. That's the first of my 5 idiosyncrasies, 5 things about myself. Well, it turns out when I got here, the people that were elders of the church, not the pulpit committee, they didn't listen to any of the questions that had been answered. They didn't listen to any of the written material I'd given. Fortunately, I did bring this up in person at a dinner, and I had witnesses to confirm that. But the main fellow who believed that water immersion is essential for salvation denied that he ever heard that, and another fellow that was a co-pastor at the time said he couldn't have missed it. But without getting into a long story, it doesn't matter. These individuals all answer to God, and it'd be like what I call armchair quarterbacks in the church, that they designate a group to go do something like a pulpit committee, even though I tell you, I'm going to cut all this out because I don't care about any of this stuff. But I was shoved out of a church, hard to work with deceit, hard to leave behind though I shook the dust off my feet. Now, didn't Jesus talk about that? If they don't receive your witness or your testimony as you go out of that house or that city, you're shake the dust off your feet as a witness or a testimony against them. And you keep moving on. You find people that are willing to listen. The first thing we have to do is be willing to listen ourselves, right? And then as we listen, as we learn, and as we're growing in life, then you find people that are willing to listen, who want to learn. And that's indeed where they will grow in life. But if they don't want to listen and they don't want to learn, for whatever reason, there's no point of beating your head against the wall, because there's plenty of people that do want to hear these things. So pray for God to open up opportunities and lead you to the people that are willing and open to hear and learn what He has taught you. This world has no use for a divinity degree. Hard lessons, hard learned. And that's the truth. A divinity degree. I knew it at the time I wrote this, but I wound up working in this time period at a place called Holley Performance Parts, and it was automobile parts. And I was working in a distribution center. They had a customer service department and also a tech department, and I've never been a car person, but I knew I could do those kinds of jobs. and that would be a salaried position. Well, I was working hourly in the distribution center, so I'd be applying for different positions, and I would never get it. And I knew I had a business administration degree. I knew I was qualified. And so I was loading the truck one evening, and the truck driver was sitting there, in his chair as I'm loading his truck, and I'd gotten to know him a little bit, and I'd probably belly aching about how I couldn't seem to break that ceiling to get into the salaried position. And he started questioning me a little bit about my degrees or education. I told him. And when I told him about the divinity degree, he said, "Oh, well, that's your problem." I said, "What do you mean?" Because I'm thinking a divinity degree, they think this guy's an honest person or whatever. He said, probably the last thing they want is somebody in there that's, quote, religious or got a divinity degree, because they might be doing some things that you would be at risk of being a whistleblower. And I said, "Oh, brother, can't believe it." So this world has no use for a divinity degree. Hard lessons, hard learned. And then my car engine burned. And sure enough, it did. Everything might go wrong, but Rob, you can't let that steal your song. Come on, you got to start singing again. Because Jesus, He's your best friend, through thick and thin. Next verse. Lord Jesus, You told us to be of good cheer. Why? Because You overcame this world and the troubles here. And You promised to be with us all of the days, even to the very end of the age. And Paul called his troubles momentary and light. He wouldn't let them hamper his good faith fight, for he knew they produced eternal weights of glory far beyond all compare. Now that's the true story. Since this time, I've been through some other fires. All you got to do is stay alive. And there will be fires, and there will be floodwaters, and there will be troubles. But he said, "Be of good cheer, for I have overcome the world." What I've recently endured, I had to just get before Him and ask, "Are You bigger than this?" And I knew the answer is yes. Okay, Lord, if You're bigger than this, which You are, and since I am Your Son, which I am, then I ask if You would be pleased to come down to my level and make me bigger than this. Can You do this? Yes. Will You do this? Yes. Why? Because I'm Your Son, and You love me, and You'll be honored and glorified, lifted up, if indeed You come to my aid in that kind of way, to make me more than conquerors. I went on to say that I'm not asking You to negate the power of sin and what it does, because sin is destructive and sin causes injury, and to try to pretend that isn't the case is a denial of reality. God wouldn't be angry about sin if it wasn't destructive. In fact, I think this age and what the angels have done, the fallen angels, is going to be a demonstration for all eternity, whatever comes next and whatever other orders He creates, that when sin is in moral creatures who have rebelled against God, when sin is present and they're functioning in that, here's what happens: mayhem, destruction, and death. I wrote something the other day, and I said, sin deadens everything in its path. I compared it to a column tornado. A column tornado is a tornado that's as big at the base as it is at the height, where it's from the clouds. It's a column. And there was one that went through Topeka, Kansas one time when I was a pretty young kid. And it levels everything, leaving nothing that was alive standing, is the way I put it. So sin is like a column tornado that just devastates. And the truth is this too: He does say that we injure ourselves when we sin against Him. Sin does bring its own injury to us that we do, but also when others sin against us, that brings injury. Now, ultimately, all sin is against God. David said, "Against Thee and Thee only have I sinned." And yet he had committed adultery with Bathsheba. The little baby wound up dying. He had trouble in his whole household for the rest of his life. And Uriah the Hittite he murdered through Joab, his commander. And yet he said, "Against Thee and Thee only have I sinned," whenever Nathan the prophet nailed David. sin is ultimately against God. So we cannot escape the power and the injury that sin might cause. And so I wasn't asking for that in this last ordeal that I went through. But I was asking that he'd make me bigger than it, just like Jesus was bigger than the sin that came against him. He was a victor. I did a message this last Saturday night about this, and I asked, when Jesus died on the cross, the moment he died, how was that a victory? Well, it was a victory because he defeated Satan at that very moment. Satan had lost, and that he never got Jesus to sin. Because if Jesus sinned, we would have no hope. There would be no grounds by which we could be pardoned. But he also, the other victory was that he obeyed the Father. He was obedient even unto death, even the death of the cross. So Jesus was victorious over sin, even though it laid him in the dust of death. But he wasn't destined to stay there, because he knew that God the Father would deliver him from that net that had been laid for him. So you told us to be of good cheer, because you overcame this world, the world and the troubles here. And you promised to be with us all of the days, even to the very end of the age. I went through Psalm 22 is what I did this last Saturday night. And it's the description of Jesus right to the point of death. And if you go to Psalm 31, verse 1 to 5, the very last things he was thinking before he said his last words, into thy hands I commit my spirit. And just as God the Father saw the very end of Jesus' life, so he sees the end of my life and your life, to where he will lead us and guide us even unto death. So he promised to be with us all of the days, even to the very end of the age. He will never leave us or forsake us, and he'll give us the power we need as we go through life, including our death experience if he doesn't come back first. He'll give us the power that we need to be an overcomer and a victor. That's the hope. That's why we got to seek him. We've got to seek him. We've got to have him as our resource. We can't be fiddling around here, and then when we get in these times of real crunch, then to have him show up. I mean, you're taking a tremendous risk. We need to be seeking him all the time in our sunshine, and then when the dark time comes, he's there. Paul called his troubles momentary and light. He's beaten with rods, stoned and left for dead. All the things that Paul went through, momentary and light. And he would not let them hamper his good faith fight. He knew troubles produced eternal weights of glory, far beyond all compared. The glory that's coming will dwarf any of this trouble. Now that's the true story. It is true or it isn't, one or the other. Now when Paul was talking about his momentary and light afflictions, just listen to this passage right here. Therefore we do not lose heart, though our outer man is decaying, yet our inner man is being renewed day by day. For momentary light affliction is producing for us an eternal weight of glory far beyond all comparison, while we look not at the things which are seen, but at the things which are not seen. For the things which are seen are temporal, but the things which are not seen are eternal. The only things in this age that is eternal is our souls and God's Word. Everything else is temporal. So our outward man might be failing us, but he wants to renew that inward man day by day to where we're a tree that continues to bear fruit. The sap keeps coming even in old age. So Lord, help us all to do that and pursue that. Or 2 nights ago, the verse that came to my mind was, endure hardship as a good soldier of Christ Jesus. And then last night I was reading in Hebrews and talked about patience and faith. They go together, patience and faith. We're waiting on God, we're trusting him as we move through these things. And he promises that he will cause all these things to work together towards good. He'll take these black strokes that come through our life and mold them in a way that produces good things in us if we keep seeking him, to those who love him or who are loving him. So everything might go wrong. But Rob, doggone, you can't let that steal your song. You got to start singing again to Jesus, you see, because He's still your best friend. Well, even though this song is almost done, you may have noticed I haven't sung note 1. All I can say is I'm doing the best that I can. Gotta crawl before you walk. I need encouraging to start singing again, through thick and thin. So everything might go wrong, but doggone Rob, don't let that steal your song. Come on, you gotta start singing again to Jesus, because He's, and I start singing, your best friend. Through thick and thin, always has been. I'm gonna start praising Him. He got me singing again. I think that's how I'm gonna end it. I gotta finish it, that little part. This song basically came together in one shot. You know, there've been little tweaks along the way, but it was a magical moment when I was able to write it, and I hope that you'll find this a benefit to you. So Lord, help us to keep seeking Him, because whatever you're going through, we can't stay in this situation. I've got another song, I'll probably record it pretty quick, saying we can't stay here, and one of the chorus parts goes, basically, whether a pleasant scene or a view obscene, we can't stay here. That's not it. You have to look at the typing above here to get it. But the point is that we are passing through this, and when you have good times and you got sunshine, ride them, enjoy them, thank God for them, learn and grow, and apply yourself to the means of grace. Don't waste that time. Redeem the time, knowing that the days are indeed evil. And then when the hard times come, know that you will, if you can't now, you will be singing again, because Jesus is indeed your best friend. Always has been, and always will be. You know, these are just homemade tapes that I'm making, and if you're taking the time to listen to these, I've got to believe it's more for the content and not the production quality. I started thinking about this thing of encouragement. And there was a time that David was in the midst of his turmoil with Saul. And there was one point that the people had risen against him in one situation. And he says, but David strengthened himself in the Lord his God. Or one translation says he encouraged himself in the Lord his God. And then he went out to do then what he needed to do. There are times that we need to encourage ourselves in God. Now, what does that mean? Well, it means that we need to remind ourselves who God is and who we are in Him. For example, as a son or daughter. And think about the father relationship to us. Maybe that's what we need to think about. There's another place He says, remember the deeds which He has done, His marvels. Remember them. So if there's times God has done things for you where you know it was the Lord, whether it's a dream He may have had, whether it's some other thing that He did, I keep notes on what God has maybe communicated with me as I've gone through something. And I don't look at it every day, but if I need to go back and review these things and think about these things, that's a way of encouraging myself or strengthening myself in the Lord. And we can also know that even if we are faithless, we're faltering, He remains faithful. So sometimes by bringing His promises that He's made to Him as we pray, asking Him to honor His promises, we can be encouraged because we can know that He is going to do that. So while encouragement may need to come from others, it also may need to come from our own self as we encourage ourselves and strengthen ourselves in the Lord. Well, I want to thank you for listening. So like I always say, listen, learn the things of God from His Word, and you will indeed live.